This episode is for the memoir writer who is wondering whether working on her memoir with real structure and support could actually move the needle. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain on 3 breakthroughs that happened inside of my most recent Memoir Method cohort that concluded in June. 3 real writers, 3 different moments where everything clicked. If you have been on the fence about getting serious with your memoir and finding the right support for you, this episode is going to show you what is possible when you find the right container and the right support. Let's go. You are listening to the Memoir Method podcast, the place for writers, readers, and anyone who appreciates the collective power of our stories. In this podcast, we explore the impact of memoir alongside an examination of writing techniques and strategies used in the genre. Whether you are a writer looking for inspiration and guidance or a passionate reader seeking meaningful connections through shared experiences, the Memoir Method podcast is your go-to conversation spot. I'm your host, Charlotte, editor, writer, and the heart behind Charlotte Writes. Let's get started. If you are new to this space, then you need to know that every client I work with goes through what I call the Memoir Method. This is a 3-phase framework that distills your story down to the truth that you want to share with your reader. Whether you are starting out on a first draft or staring blankly at your 5th, the Memoir Method gives you what you need to figure out what you are here to write about and what truth is living inside of your story. I run this program in a few different ways. I have cohorts that run 3 times a year. I have one in the winter, one in the spring, and one in the fall. And I will also walk writers privately through this process. In this episode, I'm bringing 3 of the biggest breakthroughs that my spring writers experienced in our 8 weeks together. And my hope is that you will see how you can jump timelines as a writer when you have the right tools and support. When writers come into the Memoir Method, they don't expect the breakthroughs to happen when they do. And after almost 6 years of supporting memoir writers, I have seen that you think you won't have your own breakthrough, and then you do, every single time. Every single writer I have walked through this process, especially within this new format of the Memoir Method that I've been running in 2026. Every writer has had massive breakthroughs in both their actual storytelling and in their creative process. I'm so excited to pull back the curtain in today's episode. You will see that the breakthroughs waiting for you as a memoir writer aren't going to be massive, earth-shattering revelations about your past or your process. That's not usually how it works. I'm talking the one line in feedback that unlocked something you didn't know you were missing, the homework assignment you were slogging through. Yes, I give homework to you in this program. And then 2 weeks later, something clicks and you go back to redo it because everything you were confused about makes sense now. Or writing a paragraph and realizing mid-sentence that you're here to write something different from what you thought. And what you're here to write actually feels easier and more fun. Let's talk breakthrough 1. This is with Liz. Liz is a nurse who lived through the height of COVID on the front lines as an ER nurse while raising 2 small children at home. She's threading this through her experience with a mysterious medical ailment of her own where she is the patient that she has to advocate for. So she came into the Memoir Method with a story she knew was really important, but she didn't know how to hold it together or where to start writing it. She was focused on the medical and systemic elements of what she'd experienced, the pathophysiology, the institutional failures, but something was missing. The breakthrough that she needed came from a single line of feedback. In the Memoir Method, you complete weekly homework that I then review and give feedback on. I'm the coach who's going to ask you hard questions, probe deeper, play devil's advocate, and pull on every single available thread that I can see so that you know exactly what you are working with as the author. I did this with Liz's work as well, and I asked her a question in one of her edit submissions. She hadn't even seen what I was seeing, and what she did, those disparate pieces she was trying to thread together fell effortlessly into place. With that new reframe available, we then figured out how to slot in a scene that Liz really wanted to include and that felt relevant, but she didn't know how to make it all flow. Now she does. When you are so close to your own story, and this is true for every single writer that I've worked with, it can be really hard to see everything clearly. One reframe and one piece of feedback unlocked a flow for Liz that she had been looking for. When we wrapped up the spring cohort at the beginning of June, she said that she knew exactly what she needed to work on over the summer to make progress in her draft. Something that I saw in Liz is that she came into the cohort without a draft. She didn't really have anything to start with, which is totally fine. After our 8 weeks, the way that she was moving as a writer, the way that she was making time for her writing, the way that she was embodying that identity as a creative writer was so clear to me. It was so amazing and fun to see how Liz showed up for herself. Her husband noticed. He noticed that she was taking this way more seriously than he had thought. And he saw her moving differently. This is already rippling out, and she doesn't even have her first draft ready. She started moving as a creative writer, as a writer here to say something, and it's paying off. It's paying off in her draft. She's an excellent writer, and she knows it. She's moving like it. And that, as an editor, that was one of my favorite things to see in her evolution in our 8 weeks in the cohort. Breakthrough number 2 is with Julie. Julie had sat on her memoir for years. She would try to write. She would get overwhelmed within 15 minutes and give up. So she was a very start and stop type of writer. She'd had people for years telling her, oh, you need to write your memoir about that. She still wasn't sure, though, that anyone who didn't know her would care about her story. She was worried that her book would be another book on grief and loss in a market that's full of them. She came into the Memoir Method unsure, hesitant, deeply in need of someone to tell her that her story was worth telling. But deeper than that, and I don't know if she knew this going in, she needed to believe that her story was worth telling. I can cheerlead you all day until I'm blue in the face, but if you don't actually believe me, you may believe I believe that, but if you don't believe that what I say is true, then you're not going to get very far. Julie was able to get to a point where she believed it was true. About 6 weeks into the cohort, she sat down to write her first full excerpt or rewrite something that she'd had written. So this is a piece that pulled together everything that she'd been learning across the program. She started writing, and then she felt something that she hadn't experienced before as a creative writer. The elements were flowing. The story was coming together. The reader was present in her mind. The structure was holding. When I sent her feedback on her writing, it confirmed to her what she intuitively felt, but didn't trust yet. She was doing the work. She was writing the memoir, and it was incredible. And she knew it. She was worried that she wasn't writing to her reader. She had some insecurities. And then I confirmed to her, no, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You're taking these elements that we've been working on and refining and workshopping every week, and you're actually putting it into your draft. You're doing it. She was building the emotional arc. She was acting on creative instincts that she had previously been afraid to trust. Julie's breakthrough wasn't necessarily about a new reframe like Liz's was. Julie's was a confirmation that she really did know what she was doing, that she really was learning, that her story has depth and texture and layers and nuance that readers need. The reader that she's writing for is desperate for her story. And now Julie feels that and she knows it. It was so much fun for me as Julie's editor to see that she really was integrating everything that she'd been learning over the 8 weeks of this program. I know that sometimes it's hard to take yourself seriously as a writer, but all Julie needed at the end of this 8 weeks was the confirming nudge that yes, she is a writer, she's writing her memoir, and it's good. One of my favorite parts of these cohorts is when you realize that you're better at this than you thought. The confidence comes in. You feel like, oh, I actually do know what I'm doing. This story is actually worth writing. And that conviction, that's what's going to carry you through the revisions and publishing process later down the road. Because if you're not going to champion your work, your story, you can't expect anyone else to. And that's one of the core visions that I have behind the Memoir Method, is to help you have the confidence that you need to champion your own work and to take that confidence into the writing and the drafting and into the way that you talk about it, into the way that you move throughout your life as a writer. Breakthrough number 3 is with Carla. Carla came into the Memoir Method with a completed manuscript, over 80,000 words, and she did not know how to make it cohere. It was kind of all over the place. She is, side note, one of the most gung-ho writers I've ever worked with. She brought a really fiery energy to the workshop calls. She was here to learn. She was here to be supported. And she had a very distinct creative process. She knew what it was like to be in the flow. She is very in tune with how her creative flow is working or not working. So she came into this knowing she needed help with pulling emotion into the piece, into her work. But she didn't have the vocabulary for exactly how to do that or what it needed. And the funny part with Carla is that she resisted early parts of the Memoir Method curriculum. So the way that the program works is you get new curriculum every week to consume. You do your homework. I reviewed the homework. We have weekly workshop calls. The early parts of the curriculum, Carla felt really sticky to her. She felt kind of clunky. When I was reviewing her homework, I could tell that it hadn't clicked yet. She was pushing back on essential exercises, and she moved through the program feeling like some of it wasn't landing. And something that's important to me as the editor leading these cohorts is that, yes, I am here to teach you this methodology and support you in integrating it. I also can't make something click for you. I want to leave room for your own creative, unique process. I'm here to give you the structure while also giving you a safe container to push back, to explore, to question what you're doing. And so that's what I did with Carla. A few weeks in, probably halfway through, maybe a little bit later, maybe week 5 or 6, she got deep into the structure homework. We do work on the structure of your memoir in this program, and something clicked for her. Everything from her hook and author bio to the parts of the program that she'd been resisting, it was like a light bulb had turned on in her brain. That resistance that she had been slogging through completely dissolved, and the missing pieces clicked in. Her manuscript that had felt like this unruly draft that wasn't going anywhere suddenly felt much more accessible and flowing. She was staying up till like 2, 3 in the morning working on it. Not every breakthrough that you're going to have as a writer is going to come when you expect or when you want it to. You're going to go through programs like the Memoir Method and sometimes think that it's just not going to work for you. We all think that we're special and you think it's not going to work. But when you persist, show up to the work honestly, and have a container, have support that you can trust. Not just trust with your writing, but trust with your emotions. Someone you can trust with your resistance and the hard parts and the questions that you have through the experience. When you have those pieces in place, you are going to progress, and you are going to have the breakthroughs that you need to write the memoir that you are meant to write, because so much of it is becoming the writer who writes the thing. You have to be the person who is able to be receptive enough for the downloads, for the breakthroughs. All of my writers shifted their actual lives, how they showed up to the work. They became new people so that they could write the memoir that they need to write. That's actually something I'm going to be talking on the podcast about later in a lot more detail, because it's one of my big breakthroughs in my own creative life over this summer. The process that I walked all these writers through, that I walked Carla through, it's cumulative. When Carla came onto this workshop call and said, it makes sense. I know what I'm doing. It was the coolest energy because I could tell that she felt it. And when you feel it, then it's so much easier to take that to the page. And she took that energy to the page and is in the middle of revising her draft again, but with so much more clarity than she had when she started the program. So there's a through line through each of these breakthroughs. Liz's breakthrough came from a single editorial observation that unlocked a whole new line of thinking for her. Julie's came from a confirmation and validation that ultimately reminded her that she can trust herself to do this and do it well. She doesn't need me to keep cheering her on. Again, I'm happy to be a support and cheerleader to you, but you're the one who needs to believe in yourself the most. And Julie learned that she can trust herself. Carla's breakthrough came from consistency and time. None were that dramatic or glamorous, but each breakthrough completely transformed how these writers showed up to their memoirs. None of these breakthroughs could have happened on their own. They couldn't have happened without the structure, accountability, and someone with trained eyes to look at their work. None of these writers lacked talent or ideas. They just needed the container, a space, a support system that allowed them to see their memoir and their stories in a different way, and to see themselves in a different way. Again, writing is identity work. You can't start a memoir and be the same person when you finish it as you were when you started. I'd like to invite you listening to consider what your breakthrough might be. What do you need? Where are you feeling stuck? What do you keep looping in your rewrites or your process? Where are you feeling alone and unsupported? What are you missing? Whether that's a support, a resource, a tool, so that you can really take your writing as seriously as you know that you're meant to. Writing itself, the act of writing may be solitary, but the act of creating and publishing cannot succeed in a vacuum. The fall cohort of the Memoir Method kicks off in mid-September. The doors for enrollment open toward the end of August. I intentionally keep these cohorts very small so that each of you can receive the time and attention from me that you need. So if you know that the Memoir Method is what you need this fall to kick your memoir into gear, please follow the link in the show notes to join the waitlist. I'll be talking more about this over the coming weeks. This container is unique. I haven't seen any other writing container like this. Like I said, I keep these cohorts small. I cap the enrollment at 6 writers max because I want to keep the space intimate. I want to make sure you have the time and attention that you need on your work. So, like I said, waitlist is open. Please go hop on that if you think that the Memoir Method would be a good container for you this fall. Waitlist writers will have early access to enrollment. Again, like I said, I keep the room really small on purpose. So you'll have early access to enrollment, plus you will get a bonus or 2 if you join the waitlist and join me in the cohort. For the writer who wants to move faster and more privately than the 8-week cohort, I do offer Memoir Method VIP. It's basically a private 4-week condensed version that gives you the most access to me outside of my high-level long-term coaching containers. Private Memoir Method writers have 4 private calls with me and receive the same level of depth and feedback on their homework and on edit submissions. So if that's something that sounds more like your speed, please email me at hello@bookishedits.com or DM me on Instagram at the.memoir.coach, and we will get you onto my calendar. That is a really fun way to move through the program. Again, same content, same homework, same level of feedback, but you get to workshop with me privately every single week. So thank you so much for listening. I want you to succeed. Every time I get to watch a breakthrough unfold for you, I cheer. Our workshop calls in the Memoir Method are so much fun for me as your editor, because I get to see you grow in real time. It is pure magic. It's my favorite part of this job. Remember that you are meant to do this. You really are. I'll see you next week. You've just listened to an episode of the Memoir Method podcast. The Memoir Method podcast is presented by Charlotte Writes. If you liked what you heard, the best way to support the show is to subscribe through your preferred podcast player. And if you're feeling especially inspired, I'd love it if you left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Leaving a review really does help other readers and writers like yourself find the show. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find me on my website at charlottewrites.co or on Instagram at charlottejanewrites. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. And remember that you have a story that matters.